The average person will have 50,000 conversations in their lifetime, and most of them are completely worthless. And not because people are shallow, but I think it's because we're terrified of being seen. After years of studying consciousness and diving into plant medicine ceremonies and exploring quantum physics, doing all the cool spiritual methods, I keep coming back to one of the simplest truths. The most powerful tool for change is conversation. Real, raw, vulnerable conversation. I see this all the time in coaching. I mean, think about it. What is therapy? What is coaching? At its core, it's two people talking. But not just any kind of talking, because we don't change when someone tells us what to do. We change when we come to our own realizations through dialogue. When we hear ourselves say something that we've never admitted before. When someone asks us that one question that cracks everything wide open. I was at a dinner party in November, and I was actually trying to practice what I preach about being present. I was there consciously, and this woman was telling me about how she couldn't seem to get her art business off the ground. And something in the way she said it caught my attention. It wasn't about strategy or marketing. There was this deep-rooted doubt in her voice. And so I asked her, when's the first time you remember feeling that you weren't good enough as an artist? And she suddenly got quiet. And then the tears started coming. And she told me about being 8 years old, showing her dad a drawing that she was really proud of, and him telling her that she just wasn't good enough to be an artist. Well, she looked at me and said, no one's ever asked me that before. I've spent my whole life trying to prove him wrong, but I've also spent it believing him. Nobody has ever created space for her to explore this fundamental part of who she is. And here's where it gets crazy. Science shows that our brains literally sync up during deep conversations. So we're not just exchanging words, we're creating a shared consciousness. But most of us are too scared to tap into that power. We're too busy hiding behind our carefully curated social media posts and our living my best life bullshit to actually connect. Think about it. When was the last time you had a conversation that changed you? And not just entertained you or informed you, but actually rewired something in your brain. Because that is what's possible every time we open our mouths to speak. And I know some of you are rolling your eyes right now thinking, yeah, right, it's not that simple. But stick with me because there's hard science behind this. Researchers have found that meaningful conversations literally alter our neural pathways. They affect our stress levels, our immune system, even our longevity. And it's not just magical thinking, it is biochemistry. And here's the mindfuck. Even though we're literally wired for connection, we're living in the loneliest time in history. And no, your 500 Instagram followers do not count as real connection. Sorry, not sorry. But the good news is, once you understand the psychology behind what makes conversations work or fail, you can transform every interaction from surface level small talk into a portal for genuine connection. And I'm not talking about some manipulative how to win friends and influence people, even though that is a great book. I'm talking about the real, raw, soul level communication that can heal trauma, bridge divides, maybe even save us from ourselves. Well, today's guest is Alison Brooks. She's a Harvard professor who's cracked the code on conversation. So she's not your typical academic. She has done research on why some people can turn any interaction into gold while others stay stuck in small talk hell. Her new book, Talk, The Science of Conversation and the Art of Being Ourselves, blends cutting-edge research with practical wisdom about how we can all become better at this fundamental human skill. So in this episode, you'll learn the hidden psychological patterns that are sabotaging your conversations before they even start, how your attachment style is secretly running the show in every interaction and what to do about it, and the counterintuitive science behind why being more vulnerable actually makes you more powerful. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys, workplace stress is killing us. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal. So if you're feeling it, you are not alone. I used to think I could just push through everything, work harder, sleep less, pretend I had it all figured out, but that approach nearly broke me. I am all about following your joy. If that voice in your head is telling you to make a change, listen to it. Maybe you are ready to quit your job. Maybe you do need to flip your whole life upside down. But either way, you need support and tools to navigate it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to manage anxiety before it spirals, how to make big moves from a place of strength instead of desperation. And BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists and has helped 5 million people worldwide. And you can talk to someone from your couch. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling. Therapy gives you the clarity on whether that voice telling you to make a change is your intuition or just the Sunday scaries. But either way, you deserve support. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. Let me ask you something. How much time did you spend last week thinking about what to eat? Planning meals, making grocery lists, wandering around the store like a lost tourist. I used to waste entire Sunday afternoons on this, and it was exhausting. Then I found Hungry Root. Hungry Root fills your cart with personalized picks and plans your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. They have over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, and most are ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm actually headed to Michigan this week, and I had my Hungry Root order delivered there. So I already know that I have meals ready and plenty of snacks for the kids without scrambling to find a grocery store. It's just handled. And what I love most is their smart cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements just for me. So no more buying spinach that rots in my fridge. They screen out over 200 additives and only source high quality ingredients. The time I've gotten back has just been life-changing. So take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE.
As you're evolving, especially if you're on a path of growth and rapid change or evolution, it's possible that like most people who know you knew you as a different version of yourself and probably developed a sort of shared reality and understanding of you and understanding of your relationship based on an almost outdated version of who you are and what types of relationships and interactions you're looking for. And so they need to evolve with you, or in a way they will be sort of left behind.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So what led your interest in studying communication?
Oh my gosh. I think in a way, all humans are scholars of communication, aren't we? With the way we bump through life. And I think we develop all these sort of fuzzy theories about what's going well, what's not going well. We see other people, we're like, oh, they're so good at this thing, or, oh, I'm never going to do that. We're all kind of like lay scientists of communication. And I was no different until I became an actual scientist. I've been obsessed with humans and emotions and communication my whole life. I'm an identical twin. So I think it's no coincidence that I'm sort of obsessed with human to human interaction and relationships. And we, growing up, I had such a tight knit shared reality with my twin sister that it's almost like I've spent the rest of my life trying to help other people find that as well. Then I went to grad school and started actually studying how people communicate. And I figured out that there's a lot for science, for behavioral science to learn. And we know very little actually about, even though we're all walking around as like lay scientists, actual science knows very little, surprisingly little about conversation and how people actually talk to each other and what does it even mean to do a good job. And so there's a new science of conversation that's emerged over the last 5 to 10 years. And I was very lucky to be part of it and very excited to share it in my new book.
I love how you have way more hope than I do about the self-awareness of the average person. You're like, we're all kind of little scientists. I'm like, I know I am, but I found not a lot of people meet me there. I'm like, why aren't you questioning any of this?
Yeah, you're right. There is a range in introspection and sort of curiosity about the human condition. I think everybody has a little bit of a fuzzy curiosity, or at least maybe it's more self-focused for some people than others of like, oh, well, what did I just do that didn't go well? Or what did I just do that was totally awesome? And so they're just using themselves as like sample size one all the time. Whereas others, maybe like yourself, you're really watching a broader swath of people and trying to learn from them.
Yeah, and gratefully, most people that are listening to this podcast are those types of self-awareness people. But I think I come from a family that's not in a lot of ways. But while you were saying that, I'm like, no, you know what? I might not be giving them credit because they might not be self-aware in all the ways, but they are very witty. And so I think that takes a lot of honing of like, ooh, that got the reaction that I wanted, and just sort of
Totally.
from there.
Oh my God. Okay, so they're witty. In what ways do they seem less good at the sort of observational science of communication or less self-aware? Because wittiness does require a lot of sort of social sensitivity. In what ways are they less sensitive?
Well, I would say it's not as much that they're less sensitive. And it's not necessarily around communication. It's just, I had to learn what self-awareness was as an adult. I had a total lack of it and I really equated a lot to how I was raised. And I'm like, none of that side ever questions really anything. If something's going wrong, it's gotta be the other person's fault. There's not a lot of like turning inward, but like I said, they've really nailed like the humor side. And so I had to learn growing up that the joke should not come before the person. If my joke means that an entire group is now laughing at one person, it's probably not appropriate. I didn't learn that until I was like 23 years old.
Oh, and it's unfortunate that often there needs to be that intrinsic trade-off between sort of benevolence and humor. When in the book we talk a lot about how do we achieve humor and levity, hopefully without hurting people, or like also like at the same time as achieving sort of self-awareness and understanding ourselves. But I hear you. I think it may not be unique to your family. It's certainly not unique to your family. It may also be a sort of cultural shift over the last, I don't know, forever, 50, 120 years. I think that today, as people are reaching adulthood, we are more clear-eyed about the importance of like self-awareness, mental health, and not just aware of it, but like trying to prioritize it a lot more, even sort of culturally and in public discourse, which is, I think, a really great development.
Yeah, and what I love about your approach is you say that conversation is a coordination game. And I would love for you to explain what that means, but it hit home for me because I've just worked in apps and tech for so long that my brain works that way. I'm like, how can I gamify this experience? Or even when I'm trying to do something new or get better at something, I find little ways to gamify it or to give myself little dopamine hits so I'll actually come back to my own challenges.
Totally. So there's the coordination part of it, and then there's the gamifying part of it. They're both really important. Since the middle of the 20th century, scholars, economists, and game theorists have talked about coordination games. Sometimes they call them coordination puzzles or problems. But in the book, we call it a coordination game for the reason you're saying. I think it's very important to think of it in this sort of gamifying sense and have a little optimism. Like it's not a problem. It's like it's a game, and a game that we should enjoy playing and sort of have to play. So let's enjoy it. Coordination and the coordination games in the classic sense are any time two or more people make independent choices without talking to each other that have interdependent outcomes. So a canonical example is like the game of chicken, where people are hurtling towards each other and they're getting closer and closer, and they both have to make this choice. Do I veer right or do I veer left? And they have to make that choice without talking to each other. But whatever they choose is going to influence whether the two people collide or sort of narrowly miss each other and pass smoothly and successfully. That one's called a cooperative coordination game. You're hoping that the other person chooses the same thing that you do so that you pass each other and you don't collide. There are non-cooperative coordination games where people are sort of incentivized to choose opposite things from each other. A canonical example of that is the prisoner's dilemma, which a lot of people have probably heard of. There's like two people who've been brought into jail. They're being questioned in separate rooms. So again, a coordination environment because they can't communicate directly with each other. They're both facing this decision. Do I snitch on the other person or do I stay silent? If both people stay silent, they'll go to jail, but not for very long. If they both snitch, they both go to jail for a really long time. So it seems obvious that they should just stay quiet about it, but they both have a temptation to snitch, because if they snitch and the other person stays quiet, they get to walk free and the other person stays in jail. So this is a non-cooperative coordination game where you're trying to sort of guess, what is my partner going to do? And we're incentivized to betray each other. So anyway, in the mid, so conversation, every conversation is sort of like these very simple one-shot decisions because we're constantly making little micro decisions without communicating with each other. Like, what should we talk about? What should we disclose to each other? What should I ask you? What should I not ask you? Should I ask about your kids? Should I ask about your mom? Should I tell you about, my acupuncture? Should I not? We're making and every one of those little choices is like a little mini coordination game. And the conversation as a whole is like this constant, relentlessly unfolding, massive coordination game. And unlike the game of chicken, it's not just one choice, right? It's like many, many, many choices. And so, of course, we as humans constantly bungle those coordination choices. Like, some of them go well, some of them we pass each other smoothly, and sometimes we get to like not be in jail for too long, but sometimes we mess it up and we both snitch and we both have to stay in conversation jail for too long. And that's the book sort of seeks to help us at least confront or approach this coordination game with a bit more confidence and more skill than we might have naturally.
This makes sense as to why so many people end up in these toxic dynamics with specific people. Like, I feel like we almost all have somebody in our lives where we're like, what is it? My conversations go so well with everyone else, and whenever I'm talking to you, it's just like we butt heads and everything ends up becoming like a disagreement.
Yes. I think often we sort of attribute it to we're incompatible people or we have a toxic relationship, when in fact there probably was one sort of inciting moment. There was a first seed of a moment where you had your first disagreement that probably wasn't managed well, that sort of spiraled downward. And when you've landed in this equilibrium in your relationship where you've developed habits of how you relate to each other, what you know about each other, how much you like each other or dislike each other, that you've landed in a sort of unhealthy or toxic equilibrium. It's very hard to break out of that kind of toxic equilibrium. But you could remain hopeful that you could do, even with the best conversation skills, even that you could do. There's an exercise I make my students do. I teach this course at Harvard called Talk. And one of the final project options is called the relationship reboot, where they have the option to reach out to someone that they've lost touch with entirely. Like, not only was it toxic, but they no longer are in touch. And they reach out and they schedule a couple conversations to try to reboot a meaningful relationship with that person. They're some of my favorite projects because it's hard to do that. It takes a tremendous courage and tremendous sort of vulnerability to do that. And when they do it well, it's quite moving.
was just talking to a friend who's been trying to hire someone for 3 months. 3 months. She's been posting on random job boards, scrolling through resumes that make no sense, getting ghosted by candidates. It's a mess. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the very top of the page for your relevant candidates so that you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it just makes hiring so fast because you're not wasting time on platforms where nobody's actually looking. Your job gets in front of real candidates who are actively searching. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Yeah, I'd love to play around with that. I'm thinking of, because you're right, it's usually not, I mean, yes, I'm sure we've all met people where it's like, ooh, just this person is rubbing me the wrong way. But I'm actually thinking about several relationships where everything was fine for about 10 years. And then all of a sudden it goes sour, even like 25 years with certain family members. And now I'm like, how do I get out of this? But even in trying and having that self-awareness and being like, okay, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to yes and everything from this conversation instead of actually saying what I say or what I want to say. And then it just feels like we lose ourselves a little bit. So how can someone come to a conversation, whether it's normal or potentially difficult, and where's that balance of openness and allowing the conversation to guide you versus also staying authentic and true to who you are?
I know it's a really hard one. Every relationship in your life, even with an encounter with a stranger, but certainly every relationship with coworkers, with family, with friends, is just a repeated sequence of conversations over time. There's these beautiful illustrations by an artist named Olivia de Ricat called Closeness Lines that they were in the New Yorker a few years ago. I love them. They're reprinted in the book. But the idea is that you could map the sort of closeness of every relationship as two lines sort of converging and diverging and changing and then ending over time. They're really beautiful and moving. You think of like a one-night stand as just like straight lines that cross at one point. You think of a parent, maybe you're really, really close when you're kids and you drift apart, then you come back together and then their line ends before yours does. And so seeing relationships mapped in this way, I think is very poignant. When I look at her closeness lines, what I see missing are the sort of knots along the line. Where are the conversations? What happened in each of the conversations that maybe pushed your closeness lines apart or pulled them back together? In the book, we talk about a metaphor that each one of those knots is sort of like a light bulb, like a string of cafe lights. And our tiny micro decisions in each conversation have the potential to make each one of those bulbs sort of glow a little bit brighter. But then you get to this question that you're asking, which is, okay, well, let me see if I try to be receptive to someone who I disagree with or I don't like being around, but I still feel obligated to interact with. I can make our conversations go more smoothly, but at some point that becomes unrewarding to me. I don't feel like I'm actually learning much from them. It doesn't feel enjoyable. Then I ruminate about it. Then I question, who am I? Why am I being weak, etc. I think it's helpful to reflect about what you have control over and what you don't have control over. During a conversation, you have control over your own choices, right? You can control how you react to somebody in difficult moments, but you can't control what they say or do. which is endlessly maddening, right? For everyone who has like controlling impulses, it's really frustrating that conversation is co-constructed. You actually cannot control the whole thing. And every time your partner says something new, it creates this new, spontaneous, immediate context to which you need to respond. So that's hard. And then ultimately, if you have enough unrewarding conversations with somebody, you have control. You sometimes have the option to sort of deprioritize them in your life. And I think that's sort of what you're grappling with, which is like, at what point do I just say, this isn't rewarding enough anymore? And there are a lot of people in the world who bring me a lot of joy and from whom I like being around better. Then there are often people in our lives where we can't even do that, right? If it's a family member and you feel a sense of obligation or duty to stay in touch with them, a coworker that you have to work with. I still think on the margin, there are things you can do to essentially deprioritize people, the amount of time you spend with them and the amount of emotional or cognitive effort and time that you devote to even thinking about them, even if you still have to interact with them every once in a while.
Yeah, I am mourning the loss of, or the change, the seemingly permanent change of just certain relationships. But I find I've spoken to a lot of people in my community, and there's something lonely about being on a path of personal growth because not everyone's on that path. And if anyone out there is like me, it's like sometimes I'll be like, oh, yes, this is a group that I fit into. And then I keep growing. And then I'm like, it doesn't feel like it fits that much more. And then you start questioning, well, what does belonging even mean? What are my expectations for this? And so then I went through a phase of like, and still have this phase, but a process more so of trying to figure out, well, this friend is really great for, or when I want to feel heard. This one's really great for inspiration. This one's really great for when I'm going through something tough, and realizing that not everyone can be what you need in every single scenario.
Yeah.
But then I think at some point, it's just, like I said, it's just kind of lonely being that introspective in conversations and in relationships so often.
Especially if most of the people that you feel close to or know knew you as a different version of yourself, right? As you're evolving, especially if you're on a path of growth and rapid change or evolution, it's possible that like most people who know you knew you as a different version of yourself and probably developed a sort of shared reality and understanding of you and understanding of your relationship based on an almost outdated version of who you are and what types of relationships and interactions you're looking for. And so they need to evolve with you, or in a way, they will be sort of left behind. And I think you're right. I think that can feel really lonely. It also requires that you're initiating new relationships with people who understand who you've become. And that takes a lot of work. Developing meaningful relationships takes time and building trust and sort of shared understanding. But I think even having the self-awareness that growth can feel lonely, successful growth can feel lonely, I hope can be comforting to some people.
Just like 2 weeks ago, I was going through one of those phases. I have like a perpetual loneliness, and I think it's from being an only child. And so I've just felt lonely most of my life, and I've seen groups come and go. It was really healing when I got married and had a family, but then still there's like the girl connections, and I've had these thoughts of like, maybe my expectations for what a really good friendship, like maybe I've passed that phase because I used to party a lot. So I'd spend like a whole week with somebody and like we'd go to festivals. And now in this phase of life, rarely am I spending overnight with anybody. And so I was just kind of grieving this idea that I wasn't going to have that again. But then I got really specific and I thought, well, okay, what is going on? Well, there's actually a great group of people up here, and there's a lot of moms, but it's hard to bond because there's our toddlers running around. So I decided to have my own little girls' night and had people over and we had like the question decks. Because
Let's
I was
go.
like, I don't want to bring people over and then like end up talking about just the kids again or whatever and not go deep. And so I was like, how can we actually get deep? So I got the question cards out and everyone was like, this is exactly what I needed. And so I just share this because what if it's a projection? What if it's like, okay, well, I'm expecting other people to do something. Well, then why don't I do it? Or what is it that I need? Figure that out and then find a way to bring that to me.
Right. We passively wait for someone to solve our loneliness when sometimes it takes proactive effort. That sounds so fun and like exactly the right thing to do. Otherwise, the conversation will revert to nap schedules and diapers and whatever, among really lovely people who have a lot more to talk about, but need a sort of external nudge when so much like of parenting and motherhood and is always so top of mind. I actually think that's a major takeaway from the book, which is left to our own devices, even well-meaning, interesting, smart people tend to revert to salient topics, things that are easily grabbed from your lived experience that day, or something that's happening in the environment, like a kid wanders through and then you start talking about that kid or about kids in general. It's so easy to sort of revert to those easy topics, but it's not necessarily the pathway to the most rewarding, fun, enjoyable, interesting conversation. And so sometimes we need a nudge and some preparation to get past the easy topics, the convenient topics.
What kind of topic preparation do you recommend and how? Do we have it for different circumstances? Do you just have your like go-to deep questions? I kind of have those for when I meet strangers. I'll just ask them something. I try to find something as inappropriate as possible, but it goes pretty well.
Can you tell me one of your go-to stranger questions?
Well, I actually just sat down. I went to have a happy hour meal. I don't drink alcohol, but I was just sitting at the bar at Tommy Bahamas, and this other guy comes and sits next to me, and I just turn to him. And usually my first one is, "Are you the type of person that talks to strangers?" And I do it like really deadpan. And so people get uncomfortable even just by that. But then I like to
it's so comforting. Honestly, it's surprising, but it's not uncomfortable. It's sort of like delightfully comfortable. I'm sure they love it.
Well, and then he was like, "Well, I don't think anybody really is." And he kind of tried to brush me off, but I didn't really stop. I like asked him something else, but then I saw his notifications on his phone go off, and I just was like, "What kind of subreddits do you subscribe to?" Then he knows that I'm snooping his notifications and he gets all red. And then at one point he said something about something and I was like, "Are you a Republican?" And he like looks at me all terrified and was like, "Is it terrifying when someone from Southern California asks you if you're a Republican?" It was just like, I just kept going because I could tell I was older than him and it was fun for me. But yeah, just little things like that. I like to like just, I don't know, not be a normal person.
I love that. I love that. I wish there were more people like you. I feel like it's like a great litmus test. Some people, if you ask them those questions, would be so delighted to talk to you about it. And other people are like, "No, thank you." There's some really great research by Nick Epley about the surprising delight of interacting with strangers, which is made much more interesting and fun if you ask them interesting questions that are not just like, "Hey, how about the weather?" or like, "How was your weekend?" or whatever. So keep going. I think so. You have to expect that some people are going to react like, "Get the hell away from me," but other people really might engage with you in a way that's really fun.
He did open up, and actually at the end, because we were there for like an hour and we ended up talking, found out what he was reading, where he's getting married, all sorts of stuff. I think he thought I was hitting on him at first until I showed him pictures of my kids. But when I went to walk away, I was like, "See, don't lie to yourself. You feel totally better having spent an hour talking to a stranger than an hour scrolling your phone, and you know it." And I just like walked away and just nodding.
It's so true. There's another great scholar, Gillian Sandstrom, who's in the UK, who her whole life and all of her work is devoted to the like surprising joy of connecting with strangers in weird places, unexpectedly. And that's her whole argument, which is like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour spent talking to a stranger is almost always going to bring you more joy and more learning than doing many, many other activities that we tend to do these days, like doom scrolling. So that's great. Keep going.
Well, how do you prepare topics? Because
Okay, good. Good. Circle
I'm
back.
thinking that I want like age group topics. Like one of the questions I ask older people a lot is, I just asked a man in the post office line this. I'm like, since you've been alive, what has been our strangest technological advancement to actually like accept into your life? And he said, "These damn phones, man." Like, my grandkids barely look at me. And I was like, oh my God, I know. We miss the
Oh,
90s.
I wish he had said like a, I don't know, like a medieval trebuchet or like a horse-drawn carriage or something. I don't know. No, but it has to be the phones. Oh man, it's almost empowering. It's comforting to hear it from somebody who lived so much life without them.
Yes.
That's very, very nice. Okay, but back to your question. Sorry, I'm taking you on digressions, fun digressions. So there's so many ways that you can stratify questions. The first, so topic prep in general is easiest and most effective when you already know somebody, because then you can personalize it. You can think about, what did you talk about the last time you were together? What's been happening in their life? What's been happening in your life since the last time you talked? You can think, what have they been doing that they're going to find interesting? What's that Onion headline that reminded you of them? Like, you can just stockpile all of these questions and ideas and things to catch up on that are going to fill your conversation with so much. To almost everyone I talk to, I feel like there's so much to talk about. We could never get to all the good stuff, because it pushes you to think about them when you're apart. Right. And that's a huge part of kindness, about being other oriented, about real connection, is like, yeah, you're spending time thinking about them when you're not together. So then the precious moments that you're able to do meaningful, exciting, fun, productive things together. So personalized prep for people you know. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can just be like, oh yeah, by the way, like last time we talked, she said she was thinking about guitar lessons. I should ask her if she did anything about that. Or, oh yeah, she was obsessed with this like skirt. I wonder if she went and bought the skirt, right? Or she was working on this thing at work. I wonder if that went anywhere. I'm going to check in with her about it. Just small stuff. And you can just think about it and try to remember. You could jot it down on a little piece of paper. I like making notes in my Google Calendar and then just like sort of looking at it quickly before I start talking to somebody. It literally takes like 15 seconds, and be like, oh yeah, I need to ask about their dad. Their dad was sick, so I got to check in and see how he's doing. That makes the conversation so much better, so much smoother, less anxiety inducing, less awkward, because you have so many ideas about meaningful, important things to talk about with them. It will feel sort of chock full of goodness. Then you get to the category of people that you don't have as much shared reality with, and it's harder to personalize topics. Sometimes this is acquaintances or people in the workplace, but sometimes it's literally like strangers, like people in line. And I think your instinct is right. For all of these types of people, you can develop topics that are good for different like archetypes, right? Like different age groups, people who are much older than you. You can ask them about their experiences with technology, or like, what are they excited about these days? Oh, I know that old people tend to feel marginalized because they're retired and nobody respects them anymore. Let me ask, like, what are you working on these days that you think is important? Because nobody's asking them that anymore. So just thinking ahead about young people probably dying to talk to somebody about like, what are your hesitations with techno? What are you loving about technology? What are your parents making you do that you don't want to do? What are they helping you do that you love? Right? So talking to people that they don't usually get to talk to, you could think ahead. What are things that would be enjoyable for them to engage about? For almost any archetype of any person, a barista at Starbucks, like, just think ahead and say, okay, next time I get my coffee, I'm definitely giving them a compliment. That's going to make their day. That's topic prep. And then you're more likely to actually do it when the time comes and make that interaction just like a little bit more meaningful. Yeah, so just topic prep. It's very rare that you would go through your day and be so surprised by an interaction with someone that you couldn't have thought ahead in some way about something to talk about with them. Really. And I don't know if that's sad because our lives are very predictable, or an opportunity because it means that you can prepare mentally for what would be most rewarding to talk to people about.
Yeah, and I think rewarding is such a good point because I remember I'm always the kind that's like making little games out of things. But like I said, I have to if that's how I'm going to get myself to change or get good at something. I have to find what's in it for me. And I remember once I was reading a book on communication when I was in my 20s, and it was actually a book on how to be charismatic. I was like always Googling the things to be better. I recognized from a young age that I could grow into the type of person that I wanted to be. But I remember going out, and I would go out often by myself in West Hollywood, and I would have these like challenge myself to have conversations with people. And I got really good at it. And also, I would find myself like tuning out because I hadn't really tied it into like, how is this rewarding to me? And then I
Yeah.
had this whole internal crisis of like, really? Like, am I not a good person? Do I not care what other people have to say? And that's when I started actually saying, well, it's because I need to ask the deeper questions. Like, I want to find out these weird questions that I ask people. I want to see how people react to deeper questions. And it became more for me about their reaction. And so less about the question and like more about like, can I get this person to go deeper? Can I get this person to open up? And that was my game. But I think that is something that a lot of people come across. They're like, it's just easier to stay silent in the elevator. Like, why am I why am I practicing this? So what do you see the overall reward being, other than just kind of playing with your day?
I would love, let's revisit, hopefully if we have time, revisit the idea of why playing the game for the game's sake feels empty or like inauthentic. I think there could be moments where just being willing to play the game together with another human being is a sign of interest and caring, even if it's the content you're not actually sort of learning new things or like deeply, sincerely interested in. Just the energy and sort of chutzpah to play the game at all and sort of initiate things with people in that way is a form of interest and caring that is meaningful. So let's set that aside for 1 second. It's a topic that comes up a lot in my class because once you learn sort of like hacks about any sort of advice about how to communicate more effectively, whether it's to like try and be more charismatic or, ask more questions or make jokes or whatever, it's easy to say, well, is this just a game? Am I just like playing a game and trying to win a game? But let's put that to the side for a second because your question is a really big one, which is what are the rewards of conversation? Like, what are we doing here? What are we looking for? The answer is that, every person that's involved in a conversation is likely looking for different things. And it's a sort of vast constellation of motives. In any one conversation, people always have at least one goal or they wouldn't bother talking to each other at all. So even in this sort of gamifying it, we're going to ask a silly question to a stranger in an elevator. You had some goal of like, well, I just need to engage with somebody. I just need to make this day more interesting for myself by doing this. That's like one totally legitimate goal. Usually when you really have conversations with people, you have many more goals than that. In the book, we talk about a framework to help us organize the many goals that people pursue in conversation. There's no judgment about that, like one goal is more important or better than another. The idea is like, let's develop more self-awareness about what the possible goals are so that we can just have like a little bit more awareness of what are we aiming for, even if it's just to be polite. Like sometimes you just need to uphold the expectation that you need to respond to somebody when they're talking to you. That's a legitimate goal. Like, good for you. You're a polite person. Great. Sometimes it's just to be together and have fun, right? Sometimes when I talk to people, they're like, well, I don't have a goal when I'm talking to my kid. I just love them. I'm like, that is the goal. Like, you want to express your love to them. You want to understand their mind. You want to be together. Like, there's so many goals just there. And like, I'm just with them and I love them. So this framework that we talk about, we call the conversational compass. There are two axes. The horizontal axis is relational. So it maps our goals from high relational goals that aim to help the other person or help the relationship, all the way down to self-interested goals that serve you. That does not mean that they're evil. It just means that it's stuff that as humans, we have to look out for ourselves, for safety, for survival, for learning, for all of these things. So that's the horizontal spectrum. The up and down sort of y-axis of this compass is informational goals. At the top are high informational goals where we're seeking to exchange a lot of information. It's sort of the most obvious point of conversation. It's why humans evolved the capacity for dialogue at all, is to exchange accurate information. It's where making decisions, brainstorming, persuasion, learning, teaching, advice all live in this sort of high informational world. But what's really important, and we often forget, is that we have tons of low informational goals. Like often we don't actually want to exchange a lot of information. Sometimes we just want to be together and like chill out and have fun together. Sometimes we want to feel safe and protected, or even like keep a secret or conceal information. That's not bad or evil. That's just a low informational goal. And so we live in all four quadrants of this compass. The high relational, high informational is about connection. High relational, low informational is about enjoyment and savoring. Low informational, low relational is protection, like safety, secrets, protecting your time, protecting information. That's really important. And then the low relational, high informational is about advancing your own needs, right? So it's learning, it's persuasion, it's getting advice. And a lot of high achievers focus a lot on those sort of selfish, high informational goals and sort of neglect the importance of other people's goals and those low informational goals like enjoyment and having fun. In every conversation, every person is walking around with this constellation, this compass in their mind of what they're hoping to get out of the interaction. And to figure out what success even means, you need to know what they want to achieve. That's the measurable outcome. So in this, let's say in this conversation, Melissa, we didn't know each other beforehand. I really want to enjoy it. I want to learn from you. You want to learn from me. You're curious about the book. We want to share information about the book with, future listeners. So even here, we have a really complex constellation of motives. And the motives probably differ between your guests. So like my goals, I care a lot about having fun. Like that may not be true for some other people that you interview about their work. They may just want to sell, sell, sell. And you can probably feel that difference when you're talking to people. So just having a bit more awareness about what our goals are should guide the topics we talk about and how we behave when we're together.
I'm reminded of a couple different interactions that happened this year. One with a family member, one with a friend, but they were both very similar in that we were talking about something. Both of these people are people that I often end up giving advice to. They often ask about things. And so I was kind of working through two different situations and I could tell it wasn't going well. And then I sort of stepped back and I was like, I think I am recalibrating here. You right now you're wanting to be heard and not have any advice. And it's something my husband and I do quite a bit. Usually it's reversed where he's like, do you need support or like guidance? And I'm like, support, always support. Well, sometimes though, like that's something I've learned, especially with toddlers. Like that's just a thing. First, hear them, get down on my knee, cry with them, whatever they need before I'm going into teaching mode. But sometimes that's not always clear. And just like we talked about, people have these different roles. What have you found is most effective in figuring out beforehand? Is it just as simple as a blatant ask, or should you just sort of try to calibrate like a missile until you realize that you're off track?
The more you interact with somebody, the better you know someone, the more you interact with them, the better we get at figuring out what someone wants in the moment. So this is when we get to the K of the talk acrostic. K is kindness. And this is the underpinning of kindness. It's figuring out what other people need and then doing everything you can to help them get what they need. The figuring out what people need, though, is not straightforward at all. We get back to that coordination game, like the game of chicken. We're so often guessing what somebody else needs, what they're going to do, and how we can help them. And sadly, the sort of old adage of like, just put yourself in their shoes is not very effective. Humans are not good at putting themselves in other people's shoes. We're not good at guessing what other people need, even people that we know really well. We often rely too much on our own needs and sort of project them onto other people. It's called egocentric projection. So, like, I want to give you advice, so I'm going to guess that you want my advice, or like, and for whatever set of goals is unfolding. So yes, the best and so far in science, the only way to figure out what somebody needs is to ask them directly. It's the most direct pathway to perspective taking, into mutual understanding. It's the first step. There are some times when you can assume, like most people, almost everyone requires validation and affirmation before you go on to do anything else. So whether you're going to go on to disagree with them or teach them or give them advice or ask them for advice or whatever, almost everyone requires that you validate their feelings before you do anything else. You can almost assume that that's the case, not always. But the question of what do you need from me right now is incredibly powerful. And we don't ask it enough. And so then we're bound to get it wrong. Even with people that we interact with all the time, especially like your friend and your family member that you were describing. If you have a history of interacting a certain way and you have this sort of equilibrium of them coming to you for advice, it's logical that you would assume they again want your advice. So when they don't, it's important that you figure that out, that they tell you, hey, this time, actually, I just want a hug. Otherwise you're gonna get it wrong.
Sometimes I think we can, in our heads, make it more difficult than it actually is, because it feels vulnerable asking, whether you're asking for help in how to converse or whatever it is, like, I should know this. But even just in that line, what do you need from me right now?
Yeah.
That enough is for me to just like fall into somebody's arms. I'm like, thank you for asking. Honestly, I don't even know, but just the fact that you asked that is just so good. And it reminds me of a long time ago, I interviewed this guy named Bo CEO on the topic of debate, but he was talking about how understanding like professional debate tactics has helped him in communication. And the thing that stuck out for me the most in that interview that I still use today was how he talked about like how often when we're arguing with somebody, we start getting all over the place because then we're proving this point, then this point, and then nobody knows what they're talking about anymore. And so he would just stop and say, hold on, what are we trying to get to? What's our goal here? And It reminds me a lot of this conversation here, whether it's in a heated debate or in an actual conversation. It's reminding yourself to stop getting carried away with your ego's stories or what your ego's agenda. Instead, just come back and say, what is our combined goal? How can we be here now together?
There's an amazing academic paper about this where they studied how negotiators, if you talk about your superordinate goals, the goals that you all agree on, before you start the sort of hard topic, the one that you disagree about, you're in a way better position to actually do the hard part. And that's true of all conversations. And you don't always have to do it at the beginning. You could say like, pause. Let's remember all the 1 million things that we agree about. That we all love each other. We want this to go well. We want this. We want that. We love ice cream. We love warm temperatures, right? Like often when you get lost in a moment of difficulty or disagreement, we have a tendency to over focus on that topic and that issue. And we forget about the many, many other things that we agree about. Usually you agree about many more things than you disagree about. But the point of disagreement becomes over-focalize on it. A good question. So what do you need, or like, what are we aiming for here, are helpful. A question that I have gotten in the habit of asking is, how can we make this rewarding for you? That's it. That's what you need to know, is like, how do we make this interaction, our relationship, this situation, how do we make it rewarding for you? Do you need it to be fun? Do you need a hug? Do you want me to challenge you? What do you need? The thing that makes it really tricky, so definitely ask those questions more than we do. We should all be asking those questions. The thing that makes it tricky is that people often don't know what they need. Sometimes don't know what they want and need, or what unfolds during the conversation actually changes what you want or need, right? So this compass of motives and goals that we talked about can sort of shift on a dime. All of a sudden, I say to you, Melissa, I've been following you forever and I'm in love with you and like, come move in with me. What do you think? All of a sudden you're like, oh shit, now like I got to do this dance of like, no, I'm not coming to move to you and be with you. I have children and a life. What are you talking about? The revelation of new information can change what you want out of a conversation at any moment. And that's part of what makes this task of figuring out what other people need quite tricky, is that it's always changing.
It's like when the guy at the bar saw the pictures of my kids and realized he could let his guard down because he was engaged. It was that moment.
All of a sudden, his goals change. He thought there's no longer even a sliver of a chance that you were hitting on him. And now it changes into a maybe perhaps less threatening, less stressful, more interesting interaction with a friendly and odd stranger at the bar who's asking about his interest in subreddits, right?
Well, one thing that fascinates me and is just the idea that so often we're creating these micro judgments against people based on how they react or what they're willing to talk to, how they talk to. Even if we don't realize that we're doing it, I think we're making more micro judgments than we see ourselves making, some more aware than others. But one thing that you bring up in your book is that our conversation patterns actually reflect our attachment styles. And that, it was like one of those moments of unlocking a new understanding for me, because I am the type of person that can get frustrated when people don't go deep. Again, this last week was another eye opener of like, no, people can go deep. Some people just need more of a nudge than someone like me. But yeah, I realized in reading that I had formed a sort of judgment with surface layer people. I'm going to put them in a box. So tell me how our conversation patterns reflect our attachment styles, and how childhood experiences shape that.
Yeah, I think the longer I study conversation, the longer I study psychology, the more I'm reminded there are a lot of people in the world and we are remarkably different from each other. And it's just, so I have an identical twin. I think I mentioned that. Even someone who has an exact copy of my DNA and my upbringing, she has wildly different lived experiences in the world and different beliefs and different preferences and different jokes and different everything. And so, that's people who are identical, right? Like essentially the same person genetically. People are just incredibly different from each other. And so we are likely to confront those differences unexpectedly and in weird ways all the time in conversation. And unfortunately, the human mind is built to make judgments and rely on stereotypical thinking and put people in groups, right? Like focus on one aspect of who they are, whether it's their race or their gender or their religion or their sexuality or whatever. It does take constant effort to fight against those judgments as you're suspend judgment while you're interacting with someone. But it's the only way that you will be able to ask questions to actually come to learn their perspective and understand who they are, what they believe. Why do they believe that? Is it based on good evidence or not good evidence? Are you having fun with them or not having fun with them? And so often instead we confront these moments where someone feels threatened, they get defensive, things get hostile or boring, or we feel disconnected and like they're not like me, and I'm not liking this. And so the conversation and the relationship can get derailed. And so I think it's important for us to try and suspend and sort of fight against those judgmental instincts as much as we can.
Well, there's so much that we did not even have time to touch on. And so for anyone listening, if you really want to up your conversation game, there's so much in here, like emotional intelligence, how generational trauma plays in your communication patterns, like even how conversation can help you process trauma. There's so much good stuff. But I love leaving listeners with one challenge, action item, thought to just sort of bring this episode throughout their week and give them something to play with. What would that be?
I think the best thing, because we talked about it a bit, is this idea of topic prep. When they finish listening to this episode, take 30 seconds to think about someone that you're going to see in the next 24 hours. Think about what you talked about the last time you saw them, what they've been up to in the time since then, what would be fun to talk to them about or productive or meaningful. Jot it down in your Google Calendar notes or on a little piece of paper, and see how helpful it is when you actually see that person very, very soon. Give topic prep a try, even if it feels very aversive to you. Give it a shot and you'll see how great it is.
Well, for listeners that want to learn more about you, connect with you and your book, where's the best place for them to find you?
Awesome. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Prof. Alison Brooks. I'm at AlisonWoodbrooks.com. And my book, Talk, The Science of Conversation and the Art of Being Ourselves, launches on January 21st. It's available for pre-order now, and the world needs it. I urge you all to go out and check it out.
All the links for this episode are at mindlove.com/384. Your challenge for this week is to try toxic prep before your next important conversation. Take 30 seconds, literally set a timer, and think about the last meaningful interaction you had with this person. What were they excited about? What were they worried about? What were they working on? And then just write down 2 specific questions that you want to ask them. And I know it might feel weird at first, like you're planning something that should be natural. But here's the thing. Planning for deeper connection doesn't make it less authentic. It just shows you care enough to be intentional. So give it a try and let me know how it goes. You can reach me at mindlovemelissa on Instagram. I also want to tell you about something incredibly special I've been building. You may have heard about it, the Mind Love Collective. We have been doing powerful visioning work this month, and the breakthroughs have been mind-blowing. I've been getting so many messages from people that are in the group, including Linda, who said that your format is perfect for my learning style. As someone who's written curricula and been in many learning environments, I can say that your style and format, as well as your content, are stellar. And Hannah said, I'm learning more about my heart's true desires, and I thought I already knew what I wanted. And Nicole said, I'm just blown away by how much is in here. I'm loving starting the new year like this. So I'd love to have you join us. Go to mindlove.com/join to find out more. And I also want to send love to anyone that's affected by the Los Angeles fires. If you're anything like me, I have been sucked into social media, just sending out love to my friends, people that I know have lost everything. And if you are not in LA or California, you might not know, but it is worse than what you're probably seeing in the media. It's bad. It's been a little bit scary for a lot of people. And so I want to send my love to those of you that are there. Reach out to me if you want to talk. If you have been personally affected by the fires and you want something positive to focus on, please reach out to me. I will let you inside Mind Love Collective for free. And just know that I am praying for you every single day. Well, that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.